special needs, and I spent 9 years previous to this position on the board of SpedPAC as well. So I just want to introduce, he's brand new here. This is Eric Bonner. He's our new Assistant Director of High Schools in Boston Public Schools. So, Eric?
Well, good evening, everyone. As Ms. Connor said, my name is Eric Bonner. I am the Assistant Director of High Schools and Settings at Boston Public Schools. I hail from Dallas, Texas. This is my second week in Boston. I have not had the opportunity of experiencing the cold weather, but I am looking forward to doing that. A little about myself. I have been in education for the past 14 years. I've had the opportunity of working on all levels within special education. I most recently came from being a building principal of special education and advanced academics at the second largest high school in the nation. If you look that up, Duncanville High School. We encompass a little bit, almost 5,000 students within our building. So 4,884 students to be exact, but we have the highest special education population within that building. So I'm very advantageous and excited about that. Before that, I worked in the middle school setting at a 6A campus. Then I worked at a 7A campus at middle schools, being a special education art facilitator, special education art vice chair, a PPCD art administrator. So I've gone all the way the gamut from high to low, and then had the opportunity of working at the post-secondary level, also at the collegiate level, at the University of North Texas as an astronomy lab advisor and coordinator at the University of North Texas. I'm excited and ecstatic to be in Boston and be back with family. It feels like home already. I've had the opportunity. I will be coming to these meetings most readily as I'm available, and being at a lot of the campuses. My goal is to partner with campus leadership and principals, having been in that position already before, and giving them the opportunity to see the lens through a special education eye, and then being an advocate for our scholars and our instructional leaders, and then just building that gap and partnering with them within community partnerships. If you need me at any time, you can get in contact with Ms. Connor. She gets in contact with me. If you also need me, I'm available by email, just ebonner at bostonpublicschools.org. I respond back to my emails very readily. I can't stand to see that little dot there. So people could see that as I was coming in. So I answer phone calls and emails all throughout the night. And that is the principal side of me, not ever sleeping, so I'm getting a little bit more sleep now. But that's just me, period. If there's any questions, I'll feel free to have an open floor and dialogue. I wanted to speak first, and I'm thankful that you gave me the opportunity. I'm rushing off to another meeting, too, right after this. So I just want to be able to be very upfront and transparent about that. But any questions that you have for me, I've been in 5 different districts. I've seen that have a global perspective of what special education lens looks like from a larger perspective, and I'm excited about being in Boston. Any questions? I don't have a card yet. I just got an ID badge. So, I just got an ID badge, phone, and computer. So yes, most definitely. Are there any parents in here? Parents. I hate to take over your meeting really quickly. I just would like to know if you could just tell me real quickly what campuses, if you have any scholars at a high school campus, that will be very helpful for me. No high school campus? I do. Yes. Thank you. BCLA. Okay. BLA. Okay. I'm going there tomorrow. I did a lot of, so my goal is to go to campuses. So I'll be at the campuses a lot. So any other high school families? Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm going to learn and work with Ms. Connors with that. So anything that we need for those. But I ask that if you're on the high school level, please feel free to have contact with me so we can act and I can bridge that partnership between liaison between the parents and then the campus. So anything you need from me. And if you're not at a high school campus, please feel free to let me know too, and I can relate that information to our other directors. Thank you all. Thank you. And I think I stayed within my time. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. I was 2 minutes late.
No.
Tell me who you are again.
I'm Eric Bonner. I'm the Director of High Schools and Settings for Special Education at Boston Public Schools. Yes, ma'am. I'll be at the next meeting too for transition. ESY, next one. So, thank you, Ms. Connors.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
So next we have Sky, who's from the
Thank you.
Law and Education.
Center for Law and Education.
Oh, on the
talk
other
about,
side of
from
the cane,
the
but-
Cummings Foundation, talk about
So it's gonna give you a brief.
Sky, I'm sorry, before you start, do we know if anyone's gonna open the store here for the, well, there's only one kid, my kid, but, I mean, so in case it, who normally opens it, like, what's up? It's locked and we got nothing here.
We also have pizza, so.
Yeah.
All right, it's pizza,
There's
and we need
pizza and drinks, we need
Oh,
somebody.
let me see if some guy is downstairs that, I'm like, we all standing here. All right, but I'll be right back, okay?
I can go check.
Sorry, Sky, thank you.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Roxy?
Go ahead.
I don't think anybody's in the office to check.
Okay, because the door is still open, but,
I'll go check.
thank you, Aaron.
Okay, so again, my name is Sky Kokenauer. I work at the Center for Law and Education. I'll tell you a little bit about our organization and then briefly about a grant we've been recently funded to do. So we were established in 1969, and the mission of the center is to help ensure that all students have access to a high-quality education.
Sky, can you just speak up?
Sure. We got through a combination of civil rights and school reform, working both as a resource and support center, helping attorneys who assist low-income students in education matters and directly with schools, families, and communities to help ensure that both students remain in school and when they're in school they have access to a high-quality education. Historically, we've done a lot of work with IDEA throughout the years. We were primary counsel in the Boston desegregation case in the 80s. More recently, we've been doing a lot of work in career and technical education. And 3 years ago, I think, we filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. And Boston School District voluntarily settled it to begin recognizing sickle cell disease as eligible under 504 for accommodations. What I'm here to talk about tonight, we've been funded from the Cummings Foundation to create a new project to help reduce school discipline. It's called our Access to Justice Through Lay Advocacy Project, and we're focusing on suspensions of 10 days or less for non-drug, non-criminal, non-violent, for lack of a better word, stupid stuff that people get suspended for that shouldn't be. They make up about half of all suspensions, and we have our lay advocates trained right now, this group of undergraduate students and retirees, and we're just looking to get the word out to the BPS community in case anybody knows of families or students in need of our services. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to duck out at about 7:45, but I did put my card, and we have a one-page flyer kind of describing what's going on over on one of the local lines. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just also wanted to let people know that we have a Spanish translator here tonight. If anybody is in need of a Spanish translator, right over here, thank you for coming. And also I would ask if you folks, if everyone could sign in. This is a SpedPAC just sign-in sheet, that would be really great. I'll just send them. If you could pass them along, I'll leave one up here. And Diane, you ready?
Yep. Do you want to work this
Yep.
through or stand up?
Okay.
Yes, you got it.
Okay. So we have a large lineup tonight, so I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I'm going to kind of go an overview on transition services, what it is, the definition of it, and what we as parents can do to assist our children in the IEP process with transition. We have representatives from DDS and MRC here as well to speak to you, and someone from Lesley University. I don't know if they're here yet. Oh, okay. So, and he's going to speak as well about a really wonderful program that they have at Lesley. So, so the definition of transition services. So, oh, I think we can skip one. Okay. So, it's a coordinated set of activities for a child with a disability or a young adult with a disability designed to be within a results-oriented process focused on improving academic, functional achievement of the person with a disability. And it's really, its main goal is to facilitate the child's movement from school to post-secondary activities, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, which includes supported employment, which is something that my daughter has, continuing in adult education, adult services, independent living, or community participation. Go to the next slide, we can kind of break that down for you a little bit. I think you skipped one. So your students, so you want to identify what your students' needs and what their strengths are. So what does your student need, and what are their strengths? What are they really good at? You just get to carry over tonight, another Friday night meeting. And you want to ask, who does your student want to be, or what does the student want to do? Those are questions at the IEP table that you want to talk about. What are their preferences and interests? And what is the fit between the student now and the student's plan for adult life? That's a big question that you want to talk about at the IEP table. You want to really discuss, if that student, maybe they're age 14, 15, 16, 17, but you really want to define at age 22 or at age 18 or 22 when they're leaving public school, what is their life going to look like? So what you and your student decide what that life is going to look like, in between all those ages from age 14 to 22, those are the things that you want to work on and strengthen them. You want to ask questions of what's your child going to be doing all day?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. What is your child going to do all day? Are they going to be employed? Are they going to be going to college? What are they going to do for leisure? What are they going to do in the community each day? So you want to start thinking about those things. Where are they going to live? How are they going to get around? Transportation is a really, really big issue. We live in Boston, so we have public transportation. So you want to start talking about that. You want them trained to be using public transportation or things like Lyft and Uber. Will they hang out with family, friends, clubs? You really want to start thinking about all of those things. I know it feels overwhelming at an early age of 14, but you want to start putting those in the back of your mind and starting those conversations at the IEP table. So there's a state requirement by age 14 where transition services should start. In some other states, it starts legally at age 16, but here in Massachusetts, we're lucky it does start at age 14. We always talk about, and we work with the Department of Education, they say really schools should be starting even earlier, but that is the law. So part of what they do is the student's invited to the IEP meeting as a full member of the team. And annually, they consider what we talked about before and what was defined, the students' needs, their strengths, their preferences, their interests. That's something that you want to talk about annually at every single meeting because those things can change. What are their desired outcomes for post-secondary education? Do they want to go to college and how are we going to get them there? What training do they need? What kind of employment training do they need? What kind of skills do they need to live independently in their adult life? The TPF form, which I'm not going to go into great detail about, is something that is part of the IEP, but it's not embedded in the IEP. So it's a form that each year annually you'll fill out as a team together and to discuss all of these issues, what the students' needs, strengths, preference, and interests. And then you want all of those embedded into some of the goals of the IEP. So those goals should be documented in the IEP. And you want to make sure they're measurable, post-secondary and annual IEP transition goals related to the training, education, employment, independent living as appropriate. So you want to ask those questions. Are these things embedded in the goals? Because those goals equal transition services. So I think everyone has a handout. We'll put this on the website. So these are things from the Department of Education that you can look up that defines deeper transition services. So this is from the Department of Education. I asked them if I could use a couple of their slides. So I can't see the top of what that says, but they should be able to see, anyone reading the IEP should be able to see a clear linkage between the students' post-secondary goals, transition assessments, annual IEP goals, and transition services. So if you have a transition assessment, they equal into the post-secondary goals, which then will go in to the IEP, and then that equals your transition services. So you want to make sure that those goals that you're working on for transition services get into the IEP. It's really important because that is how you're going to end up with your transition services. Okay, so we're gonna review transition services which related to community and independent living. So these are things that, depending on your child, and everyone's individual, and what you and your child or your young adult at this point decides what is most important to them. I think for everyone, for most, are how to use public transportation. Safety skills, if they are going to be taking the train, you want the school to work on those safety skills, to be out in the community. Banking, purchasing skills, how to use a debit card, financial management, medical needs, if they're taking their own medication, are they capable of managing that themselves? Appropriate behaviors in restaurants and stores, that is really a big one, because if some of our students who might be educated substantially separate, we want them in the community, because if they have behaviors when they're out in public, when we're picturing them getting a job, whether it's regular employment or supported employment, we want to make sure that those behaviors are being worked on often. Interactions with neighbors, police, and fire, all those appropriate interactions are extremely important. Get them out into the community. Accessing recreation and sports opportunities, I think, is really huge, within your own community. Reaching out to find out what is going on in your community that is supported if they do need that kind of support, because, eventually they're going to be independent, they're going to be out of school, so you want the community to know them and to get to understand them, and you want them to develop social skills, and they can develop some of those social skills by doing the recreation, some of the sports activities. So, again, this is something I mentioned before, you want to, every year, discuss with the IEP team, talk about, say, what will my child look like when they exit the school at age 18 or 22? Do they want to go to college? So what supports and resources are needed to make this happen? So SAT prep, independent skills, executive functioning, social skills. We hear from, I work at the Autism Commission, and we hear from a lot of families who will call us and say, my child is brilliant, they went off to college and they flunked out, they failed, they're coming home now, because the executive functioning piece is really a big deal, and those social skills, independent living skills, to the time management skills. So to prevent that from happening, start thinking about that at an early age. What skills do the students need to be on a college campus and live independently, get to class on time? The school is required to work on those skills. Does your young adult want to be employed? Ask about internships early. Travel training, resume writing, self-advocacy, talking about themselves and who they are and their disability, because sometimes in employment you might have to bring that up as part of the job. You want them to know maybe there is a slight learning disability, maybe there's something going on. You want to be able to talk to your student or your young adult about sharing that. Doing mock interviews, and state agency involvement is huge, and MRC and DDS will review that. And does your young adult want to live independently, or like I say about my daughter, somewhat independently? So you want to talk about daily living skills, cooking, cleaning, hygiene, financial skills, opportunities in the community. Those are all skills that the school is required to work on when you tell them, I want my child to live somewhat or fully independent, and these are the skills that they're going to need to get there. And that's why it's important to always bring up at the meeting, whether 14, 15, 16, what is my child going to look like when they leave here? I want them to have all of these skills. How are we going to get there? These are the things we need to work on for them to get there.
Okay.
So transition assessments, very helpful. So I think, was this the first transition assessment? Or was it one? I had 2 slides. No, it was the first.
Okay, that's sorry. Hang on, we'll get there.
I think there's another transition assessment.
Now we're at slide 12, hang on, I'm gonna.
Okay. Okay, formal, oh yeah.
Is that good, formal, is that what
That's
you
it,
want?
the formal and
Okay.
informal. So there are transition assessments, they can be formal, they can be informal. You want to, like any assessment, you want to ask for this in writing. I think I put up here, when Lisa gets to it, it'll say, you can ask for this verbally. I would suggest you get everything in writing. Anything that you're going to ask for, I would get in writing. It's not the right
What's
slide.
going on? Is that the right one?
I think that's it.
No,
It's
it's
not-
transition assessment in the back.
Back?
Yep, and there's another one, but I'll just use the paper.
That's-
Okay. It's the assessments.
Hold on.
I have it right here, so you found, okay, there it is, formal and informal. Again, you want to get this in writing, to your school district. So formal could be career interest, inventory, psychological testing, adaptive behavior, independent living skills evaluation, Easter seals. If your school says, you know, we don't have any formal assessments, you can tell them Easter seals does. My daughter got a really great one from Easter seals. Another one is person-centered planning. It's something that, another one that when my daughter was 20 years old, we did a person-centered planning assessment, which was excellent. And then informal could just be teacher, parent observation, taking notes, self-evaluation of the student themselves, situational assessments of work skills on the job sites if they're doing an internship. And these are really, really important because from back to the other slide from the Department of Education, the assessment is going to tell you the strengths of your student. It's going to tell you what your students really, they're interested, what they want to do, and that's from the assessment you will build into the IEP and into the goals.
Keep going.
So pretty much, yeah, we can just keep going. And so for parents, and you know, like I said, my daughter's 22, she just exited the school system, so it was a, you know, since she's been 14, it's been a learning process for myself as well, but parents need to get involved. You want to start early and often. You want to talk to the schools about, you know, talk to their teachers about what opportunities are there in the school. You know, that can start before age 14. There are definitely things to do. They can answer the phone. They can work at the front desk. They can photocopy. They can be a leader. They can be a mentor to younger students. There's many, many jobs within any building that your students can do. And you want to start talking early about what opportunities there are for your child. Reach out to your neighbors, talk to them about your own child, business owners in your community, about jobs. You know, I reached out to a local florist and said my daughter's looking for a job and she's been working there for 5 years now. They buy her lunch, she orders the lunch. You know, she doesn't get paid a lot of money and I'm okay with that. And she is too. She has friends there and she has something to do every single Saturday. And we have the Strive team from Boston Public Best teach her on what she needs to do. So you can work with your school district if you do find your child a job, work with the school district on helping them to train the employers, because sometimes the employers get stuck on what they need to do for your child. Social opportunities, again, very, very important. Autism and family support centers, which DDS will talk about, they also have those social opportunities available. Opportunities for more independence. For instance, you know, if the mailbox is 5 minutes away or 2 minutes away, start sending your child to deliver mail. Maybe you walk with them 5 times and then come back and you time them. You can kind of pull back a little bit and watch them, but start giving them that little bit of independence and letting them go out. It's very hard sometimes for us parents to do that, but it's extremely important, because if we want them to be independent and employed in all these things we've been talking about, we have to start on our own at home doing what we want the school to do as well. Take public transportation together. You know, I used to take the train with my daughter, but then I started thinking about it, saying, okay, this is inbound, outbound, red line, orange line. You know, talk about safety on the train, put your phone away, you know, pay attention to what you're doing, rather than, you know, I used to say we used to just take the train together and talk about other things. We started taking the train and really talking about taking the train. So really thinking about those things as you move forward. And then more responsibilities at home. I still continue to do things for my daughter. It's hard because it's easier for me just to do it a lot of times, and she might do it a little bit slower, not the way that I want it, but I really have to let go, and you have to learn to let go, which can be very difficult for us, and let them do it their way. Learn about supports from state agencies, which you will learn about tonight, but continue to learn about state agencies, and as early and often as possible, because it's not guaranteed, the funding's never guaranteed for you,
So you want to learn about what they have available, you want to know what they have available now that might be in addition to what's already on your child's IEP. And they will have their websites for you, but they also show up at schools and they show up at different other events and continue to form relationships with them. Look for parent trainings on transition service. So the ARC of Massachusetts is hosting one in November. I didn't get the date, I meant to do that today and I forgot. But we will post that on our website. That's a one-day, it's a conference, it's in Worcester at Holy Cross. It's really, really good. And the Federation for Children with Special Needs offers a 2-day training for parents. I took that training, it's excellent. And they offer scholarships to parents from Boston, I think Boston, Lawrence, and Springfield, I think, to be able to take that training for free. And then something that's newer is the Massachusetts Transition to Adulthood Facebook group. So if you search it, if you're on Facebook, search that. I'm one of the ones who kind of monitors that Facebook group, but it's mainly parents who are on there talking about all different things related to transition. There are also other organizations on that, but it's mostly parents talking about transition services. And you can ask questions on this Facebook group. Other parents will typically answer. Because I work for a state agency, sometimes I stay back and I don't really get involved unless they're really bashing, that we have to kind of tell them it's not the place to do it. But really, mostly, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's parents helping other parents and sharing information. So, and there's one, I don't know if you can pull up the other,
Forward or back?
no, Alexa's.
Oh, yeah.
There's one thing I want to share with you quickly. So Alexa aged out in November, and her last IEP meeting, she ran the whole IEP meeting herself. So I wanted to show you this really quick because it's something that you can go back to your school and you can talk to your school about doing. They might not do it at age 14, but you might want to start considering it depending upon your child. 16, 17, 18. My daughter did her last 3 IEP meetings herself, but this was the best one. Oh, that's me when I was young. That's not what I wish I'd done. So anyway, so this was her 3-year reevaluation. She wants to be a fashion designer, so she did this herself with the assistance of her teacher. And so.
And her middle name is Rose.
And her middle name is Rose.
Yeah.
So she introduced, again, I'm showing you this because I want you to go back to your school and talk about having your child, this is part of self-advocacy, run their own IEP meeting. So she did all the introductions, her vision, she told everyone who was reporting, and she said, then she gave us time for our parent concerns. Okay, so this was her introduction, and Miss Yuki is apparently her favorite teacher, but Miss Yuki helped her. And so she talked about her current performance, what she was currently doing. So this was what her day looked like when she was still at school with teacher support. So these were all the things that she was doing, and some of this was after school. And you can see where she says, I've been washing my hair on my own, because for the longest time, she would have me wash it in the sink, and we were trying so hard to get her to do some of these personal hygiene things on her own. She finally was successful, so she put that on her current performance.
So is the current performance, that's very similar to an IEP?
It is, yes.
So that's great.
That's what she was doing. Mm-hmm. And so this is her vision, her career to work at American Eagle. This is what she wants to do. And these are her action steps on how she's going to get there. So she talked about this and listed this and talked to us. And it was great for her to be saying it out loud, and not just for us as parents or her teachers to be talking about it. It was good for her to start verbalizing this. Oh, there I am again. She loves her mother. So again, so this is her vision. This is the things, she needs to improve, and she knows, these are the things that she really needed to improve upon, and this was her action plan on how she felt like she was going to do it. She has a very hard time getting out of bed on time still, but she does set multiple alarms.
That's awesome.
Her social recreation, what she needs to improve on, and then her action plan on how she would get there. and her challenges. So it's really important for our students to talk about what is difficult for them. They need to recognize, they need to own it. For a long time, she would say to me, I do not have a disability, do not say that I do. You know, she had a hard time, and we worked really hard on her owning her disability and saying, you know, it's okay, you have all these strengths and all these things that you do really well, but we have to talk about what is a challenge for you, because if we don't talk about it, we're never going to get to the solution. So she talked about all of these things, you know, and this was new to me. I didn't know when she got on the train, because she takes the train independently now, that she got anxious. I didn't know that was happening. So then we got to discuss it, but she was able to verbalize a lot of these things, and then she had solutions for herself on what she was going to do. And she does now still use a lot of these solutions and accommodations for herself. Because we need to get her at 22. Her teachers are gone, everyone's gone. So she needs to own it and know what she needs to do for herself. And so that's it. So then I had my parent concerns, which were lengthy.
Which were what?
They were lengthy. So that's it. So next, does anyone have any questions before we move on?
Is your presentation done, the other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to invite Maria Stefanos from DDS to talk about 688 referrals.
I don't know if I need this.
It just helps
Oh,
if you ever
before,
have.
you know what, I'm just going to give out a couple of things.
It helps us in the back, it
That's
does,
what-
honestly.
Presentation, do you remember? ESP SpedPAC.
It'll have your date on it.
There it is, Mass Department of Health.
This is from Easter Seals on transportation. And you can give this to your school to talk about ways that they can help your student with transportation. This is housing, this is really important. This is going to be at the Campbell Resource Center, so there's going to be a couple things.
Alright, so hi everyone, thank you Lisa, thank you Diane, and the SpedPAC for inviting me tonight to talk about transition through DDS. And so I do want to mention that today is April 25th. If you do refer to this information at a later date, please keep in mind that sometimes guidelines change over time. And just to get a sense of the process where everyone is who's here who's already eligible for DDS? And are there folks here who are not yet eligible for DDS?
What is that?
So to be part of DDS, you need to go through the application process and the eligibility process. Sometimes I ask parents that and they say, I don't know. My response to that is if you went through it, you would know, because it is kind of a lengthy process. There's an application to fill out and documentation that goes along with it, and then you meet with someone from DDS in the Waltham office at our Metro Region office. So if your child is not yet eligible, can I put this down? Is everyone okay with this? If your child is not yet eligible, and you're thinking about adult eligibility, I certainly do recommend that you become child eligible first. The eligibility criteria are different for children than they are for adults, so you do need to go through both. After children's eligibility, you need to go through adult eligibility. But really what does help with children's eligibility is you get to know DDS, DDS gets to know you get to know your area office. As I mentioned, the Metro Region office is in Waltham, but the Boston area office is located in Hyde Park. And while somebody's a child, really they're going to get most of their supports through their schools rather than from adult services through DDS, but it's really a great way to get to know the office and get to know the ins and outs of DDS, as well as get to know the application process. And there's so much going on during transition as well, so if that adult eligibility process can be done with a little more ease because you've already gone through the child eligibility process, we certainly do recommend it. So I am Autism Program Coordinator for the DDS Metro Region, and in 2014 we had an Autism Omnibus Law passed that opened and expanded eligibility to serve individuals with autism without intellectual disability. So we refer to that group as the newly eligible population. It's been a while now, but we still do refer to that group in that way. And tonight, the presentation that I'm going to give is going to talk about eligibility and transition for both groups, so the traditional population and the newly eligible autism population. The timeline might look a little different for individuals on the autism spectrum without intellectual disability. Sometimes those students will graduate a little sooner, maybe not stay until school until 22. We certainly do say that we recommend that everybody does take advantage of the entitlement until age 22, but for some students, they do leave school earlier, and same with the traditional population as well. So we're going to get into kind of some nuts and bolts and a little bit of dry stuff, but please, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me as we go along. So as Diane said, in Massachusetts, the eligibility process begins at age 14. And that's a time for the individual and their family to start looking and planning at what life will look like after graduation. And turning 22 is a phrase you'll hear often throughout the transition process. And again, this is because most students do graduate at age 22. So while you might hear us saying turning 22, for some students it might be 18, 19, or 20, or 21. So the 688 referral, and who makes a 688 referral? Those can only be generated from the student's school system and made to an adult service agency. And while more than one agency, such as DDS, Massachusetts Rehab Commission, Department of Mental Health, or Massachusetts Commission for the Blind can be involved in the planning, only one agency will serve as the lead. The school system will help determine the transitional agency, and there should only be one 688 referral per individual. Only the school system can make a 688 referral, and this does have to happen while the student is still in school. Individuals are automatically eligible for 688 if they're receiving SSI, SSDI, or registered with the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. But they still do need that 688 referral from their school system. And a 688 referral guarantees a transitional agency, an ITP. A 688 referral does not guarantee services, and all DDS services are based on available funding. So you might see that pop up a couple times throughout the presentation as well. We certainly do want to serve everybody that we can, but the legislator does determine the funding from year to year. And so, good segue. I do want to touch upon what you might hear referred to as turning 22 funding. And it is subject to appropriation by the legislature. And DDS receives specialized funding for each graduating class. The legislature determines the availability of specialized funding on a yearly basis. There aren't any guarantees, but we are hopeful that this will continue from year to year. It is a one-time opportunity for DDS to get specialized funding for individuals included in this class. An individual can receive funding at other junctures based on availability of base resources and consideration of needs. But this is why it is very important to get that 688 referral from their school system. The Chapter 688 law requires for referrals to be made at least 2 years before the student is expected to graduate from school or turns 22. However, DDS does like to receive them at around age 17 and a half. If your child is leaving school before the age of 22, then the referral should be made sooner. If it's much before that, then the Bureau of Transitional Planning can work with you on that as well. Sorry, I'm going a little fast. I know I do have a lot of...
I just want to talk about direct referral, for instance, with the autism omnibus law. So if your child, a school district might not think that you would fall under 688, so you want to talk to your school about a direct referral, maybe, to DDS, if you want to.
Yeah, that I'll kind of talk about
Okay.
Situational more
Okay.
than the other end of the messaging on that, because I'm not quite sure where that is right now. But as Diane said, there are, it is up to the school to determine that need for the 688, and sometimes for some students, if they're doing well academically and they're showing up at school and they're going home and the school might not be aware of the other challenges a student might have outside of academics. So that's where we've seen that sometimes that 688 can fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the funding, how they capture under the 2022?
Pardon me?
How we need to capture all the students before they leave high school.
Yes, yes, so just as I was saying earlier, that 688 referral is very important, and it is very important to receive while your child is still in school, and that 688 referral is what really lets us know that there's going to be funding for that individual upon graduation and upon going into adult services. That, yeah. Okay. It's a lot of information, I know, that's coming at you.
When do you suggest that parents ask the school about it?
Sure, so since at DDS, if your child's going to be graduating at age 22 and that's your plan, at 17 and a half, we really do like to see them, so get the 688 referrals. So if by 17 and a half you have not heard from your school about the 688 referral and you haven't heard anything about it, certainly reach out to the school for that referral. And then that way,
yeah.
they might be planning, they might say, oh, we're gonna get that done within the next couple months. You're on a good timeline, but if the student gets to 18 and you haven't heard anything, you can reach out to the school again and then really start tightening in. And DDS will help with that as well.
But I think you should ask at age 14 if you even think that they might, go into state services, start bringing up that conversation. In the book that we gave out, there's a timeline, and then this other book that we gave out, there's another timeline too. That's, just as a parent's perspective, that I think that bring it up early.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea as well, especially, in light of what we were saying earlier, sometimes the schools don't recognize that there is a need for that 688 referral for that student. So as long as, if the school knows that you know that you're expecting it at that time, then you can both work together to make sure that that goes to the adult service agency.
And what's involved with that referral? Is it of the school district? Is it just simply a call or a letter going to the school, or is it documentation like this that goes to the...
It is documentation. It used to be a paper form. It is now an electronic form. So it is something that the school systems are completing and then they're sending to, I think it goes to the Bureau of Transitional Planning, and then it comes to the adult service agencies. So I suspect that you might not actually see that piece of paper.
No, I wasn't saying that, but you had said it could take a couple months for it to get to where it needs to finally go.
Oh, no, I'm sorry I didn't mean it could take a couple months. I'm just saying that maybe the school is saying we're planning on it, we have this in our process. But as far as their time on how quickly they have to turn it around, I think they could furnish one quite quickly if they needed to.
It's always wise to request it in writing around that age, so.
And that's something, I suspect they can print that form from the electronic.
You can request a copy and get a copy.
Perfect, okay,
So-
thank you. I didn't know that, that's good to know. Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa.
Did you want me to stay on this, or are you good with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, we'll move right in here.
Okay.
How much longer, about
What time is it? We have MRC 10 minutes?
10 minutes? Okay. I'll slow down a little.
Or you don't have to take 10 if you've done it
Okay,
5, that's good too.
So in order to provide for maximum planning time for adult services, it's best to begin the adult eligibility process around age 17 and a half as well. If a person is child eligible, as I said earlier, they still do need to complete the adult eligibility process. And the 688 process and the adult eligibility process for DDS are two different processes. So if you have the 688, that does not mean that you're eligible for DDS or any other adult service agency. That 688 is from the Bureau of Transitional Planning, but you still do need to apply to DDS for services, or for eligibility, I should say.
Can I just add, I think, I'm sorry, I'm from MRC, so I'll
go
speak
ahead.
after, but I think one thing that has come up a lot lately for MRC and DDS is a lot of sort of self-reflection into that we're realizing that families need a lot more support in the application process, and I'm glad that you said that and made that very clear distinction of the 688 is not, and it's not even a referral. It's not the application, you haven't even started the application process, you have just simply been referred for consideration of this adult agency. And typically what happens is that adult agency, whether it's DDS or MRC, is going to reach out to you and say, your child has been referred, here's the application packet. And what we're sending to families, both MRC and DDS, we're both guilty of it, I think, is this gigantic packet of we need their life's history, and we need copies of this, that, and the other thing, and until that's complete, that you haven't applied, and I think a lot of times what happens is we hear a lot of cases being not moved forward. And like I said, this is definitely both MRC and DDS and probably DMH, and I just don't have as much experience with it, but we expect families to be able to go through that application process, and then when they don't, or when they don't submit something, we say like, family never followed through with the application, the case was never open. And I think we're looking a lot more now at what role the schools play in that, and how much responsibility they really should or should not have to have. The Strive team
Yeah.
does a ton of, like, not 50% of their days lightly are spent, you know, running around trying to get referral application materials together. And I think we need to do a better job as adult agencies, like for the families, in terms of having like somebody to navigate that with the families. Because it's confusing. It's very easy for us to say like, didn't do what they needed to do. I guess they're not interested. But so many times, if the family just doesn't know how to access a copy of a birth certificate, then that means the student's never going to get that service, and that's unfortunate. But I think that's so important that families understand that it's not like, well, I thought we were all set because that's 688, and that's literally just your connection to the agency. That is not the application itself. So ask for help with that, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's an important part to highlight.
Sorry.
No, thank you, I think that's really helpful. Did you have a question?
Well, my experience, I have a 12th grader. I have a great person from Strive that helped me do all of these things. Would have preferred to have been pushed a little bit more to do these things back when he was 16. You know, getting the DDS and the MRC, he's only going to be eligible starting May 1st because they just finished going through all of it. But there's not enough. I mean, the school is great, the Strive team is great and everything, and they helped gather all of that stuff, and it was relatively smooth. But I don't think there's enough education about all of these things. You know, I'm talking to families in my school, you know, I'm the representative for the school that my son's in, and there's, you know, I asked them to come with me, and there are several times that some have come with me, but I just think more of them need to know more of these things. And here I am, you know, taking a few extra copies so I can bring it back with me. And it's been helpful when our parent council has coffee hours and things like that, and that's when I can share these information with families. But still, I think waiting till the year 17 and a half or entering 18 is not enough. You know, if we feel that they need these kinds of services as a minor, you know, earlier, it's just, you can't get enough of it quick enough. So that's what he's been in the school system since he was in K0, so, you know, just reflecting on all of this, I just think the education needs to come a lot sooner. I mean, and it's been presented here, year after year. I
Yeah,
know
and I
that.
think, so, it is a big issue, and that's why we're
Yes.
here trying to educate families, and I wish it was like a colder night, maybe we would have had more people here, because it's so important, it's a very large topic, and it's hard for families to absorb, and that's why on my presentation I suggested looking at other trainings that are available, that are longer trainings, like the 2-day training at Federation was even cramped, you know, 2 8-hour days. And it really is unfortunate that families are not better informed of their rights, and that, so we talked to a lot of families who, at age 20, they've never heard of transition services, so that is really unfortunate. So we would like, you know, to try, if you can help at your local schools, spread the word, bring any of this information there, have them start looking into it. The timelines are extremely important, and the timelines that we have, the one from the Autism Commission that I created, I at age 14 start asking about DDS, start asking about MRC, because it's never too early to do that, because some families, the applications, it does take a long time. You know, other families, I mean, my application, someone lost it. I don't know who lost it. The school said DDS lost it, DDS said the school lost it. I had to start the whole process over again, so we were late. You know, and I'm informed, I'm an informed parent, and how did that happen? But, so these things do happen, and it's unfortunate, but it should often start working through these things. And, you know, parents can obviously call us. This is, I'm in the way of the camera, but this is being recorded, and so they can go to our website and look at it. But I agree, and you can talk to the district about more education as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, Maria.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Linda Freeman. I remember doing this twice. Once when my son was probably in the 6-year-old range, and then again because he turned 18. So I'm thinking that for some other parents, they may not have done the very early age one,
Yep.
and were told to do the later one. It's, if you can do the early age one, so at least they're in the system, okay? Because then they have something to look at and say, you're already in the system, and this will make things easier, and all you do is update. So once they hit the 17 and a half to 18, it's a little smoother, but the documentation still has to be done.
You do need to submit more current documentation, absolutely, but I appreciate your point, and that's very true, especially, you still do need to apply for adult eligibility, but if you've already gone through it when you're younger, when you have a lot more going on during transition, it is easier to go through the adult eligibility process if you're already familiar with the process. So thank you for reinforcing that, that's very true. And then I'll just go into talk a little bit about adult eligibility. So DDS eligibility forms, eligibility criteria, and what to submit with an eligibility form can be found online at mass.gov/DDS. I don't think I have it up there. Oh, but this is where you're going to send your application. Please make copies of everything. Don't send any originals. Also, if you are printing the application out and writing on it, make it one-sided rather than double-sided as well. Anytime during the process, you can call the intake line and they can help you with any questions. So my contact information is at the end. You can certainly call me with any questions, but I don't work in intake and eligibility, so if it's specific to the application process, I'll refer you to that line. And all DDS forms do go to the regional office. So while you're applying to DDS, your connection will be with the regional office in Waltham. After eligibility, after someone receives their eligibility, then they'll be working through their area office, which is I already mentioned this, but just gave it its own slide. And then the ITP, and what is an ITP? The ITP is the Individual Transition Plan, and you might hear ITP, and sometimes it might refer to a plan, and sometimes it might refer to a meeting, and the plan might be also referred to as the document. The document really, it's not really about the document, it's about the meeting, and it's about what comes up during the meeting, and what you're going to talk about, and what really the plan for the individual's future is, but it has less to do with the actual piece of paper and more about that conversation. And that conversation and that meeting is often during the last IEP. Sometimes families aren't quite aware that that meeting is taking place. It happens during the IEP most often because that's when all of the important parties are assembled with the individual. And the person from DDS will say this is the ITP part of the meeting. So sometimes, I just wanted to let you know, sometimes it does happen when you don't really, if you don't hear that one piece, you might not be aware that that meeting is occurring. But it is for the service coordinator for DDS that will do that, and that most often will be during an IEP meeting because everybody's assembled. So as I said, the purpose of the ITP meeting is to develop a plan that includes the interests, skills, and needs of a person. The ITP is also the document which specifies what types of supports the students will need upon leaving special education. But it doesn't contain specific goals and objectives like an IEP. It's also not a legal document like an IEP. Again, it's a plan or a blueprint. And supports identified in the ITP are not guaranteed, or do they, sorry, I can't go in now, create an entitlement, and they are subject to prioritization, appropriation, and availability.
I have a question because it's the TPF is referred to in educational settings, so this is different.
Yes, and I know there's so many acronyms.
So transition, TPF would be for the district or school district, and this is for the state, for state services.
So as I said earlier, the meeting is conducted by the transition coordinator. It doesn't need to be a separate meeting and often occurs at the IEP meeting. It's ideally scheduled for for 12 to 18 months before leaving school, so that's why I said typically it can happen during the last IEP meeting. Oh, and just another point that I wanted to make is right there. I can tell you what it says. There is only one ITP and only one ITP meeting per individual. So I'll get into into services. Sorry, Lisa. Thank you.
That's all right, sorry.
So we have traditional services, and then we have self-directed services, which includes agency with choice and the participant-directed program. This might be a little far away for some folks, but it's just something to plant a seed and start thinking about. So DDS does offer the 3 service models that allow people receiving services to have choices about how their supports are provided. And the service coordinators will talk with the individual and the family member to discuss the service models. Traditional services involve a DDS contract with a licensed agency that provides particular services. The agency takes sole responsibility for hiring, training, directing, and scheduling employees, and the program structure is established by the agency. So that might be your day programs or CBDS, community-based day supports. Those are some traditional services. We have employment supports as well. And we'll get more into detail about self-directed services in the next few slides. And both self-directed models offer an opportunity to tailor supports and services to the individual's needs and circumstances. Self-direction is a way of providing supports to individuals that promotes personal choice and control. Individuals and their families decide who provides those supports and how they're delivered. Gives people the opportunity to use their allotted DDS budget to purchase supports and services that meet their goals and needs, and enables individuals to be more engaged in managing their services. Participants feel more empowered and in charge of their lives.
Can I give an example of that so it's easier?
Yeah,
So my daughter,
please.
since she's new to DDS, she has some self-direction funding. So we hired a retired teacher, and so on Wednesdays she gets about, because we have other stuff going on, she gets about 4 hours a week of self-direction money. And she just takes her into the community. They've gone shopping, they've made cupcakes, cookies together, they're just going for walks, but the whole time it's sort of like teaching, reinforcing everything that she learned previously in school and still reinforcing it. But you can hire someone to do other types of things. You know, we're going to join a gym and she'll take her to the gym. But on her phone, Alexa, my daughter has an app, and she approves payment. So when the woman comes and works with her, when she leaves, Alexa will go on her app and she approves her hours, and then this woman automatically gets a paycheck. So that's kind of how it works.
And Alexa's the boss.
And she's the boss, so she's in control, and I'll remind her, did you approve her time, and she'll say yes, and so.
And individuals, depending on their level of what they want to do or how much they can do, or over time, and I've seen individuals that, you know, maybe starting out and they're getting a lot of help from DDS with their parents, and then over time really take on a lot more of the responsibilities, and it's very empowering for folks as well. So what somebody will do with their self-directed supports is the supports really do relate back to an individual's goals and needs and vision. So what one person might be doing for self-direction might not be the same thing that someone else is doing, but it really depends on what the needs are of the person. And like Diane said, I have an example of an individual who had a gym buddy because the individual had anxiety. So to reduce his anxiety, he went to the gym. However, he had a lot of anxiety about going to the gym on his own. So that's why self-direction was allowed for him to hire a gym buddy to go to the gym with him to reduce his anxiety and socialize, get a little bit of exercise as well. So the next slide just talks about self-directed models. Agency with choice enables individuals and families to share their responsibilities with a qualified provider. The individual family is responsible for selecting the employees, setting the work hours, and managing the day-to-day service delivery. Evaluation and training is shared between the agency and the individual. The agency employs and pays the worker, assumes payroll, withholdings, taxes, and workers' compensation responsibilities. So with this model, you get a little more support, but some of your funding does go towards the agency to help with the administrative fees for that support as well. And the participant-directed model, and somebody can move from one model to the next or back to traditional services as well. So depending on what's working or what might not be working for an individual, and then you can choose between models and work between models. You can do a hybrid, and then maybe at some point, you know, stay with.
So just saying that we have to wrap it up and start doing that.
All right.
Thank
So, if you can, there are a couple of forums coming up. Betsy Eden-Irwin is a self-directed sports manager. There's a flyer for this event up front, but if you keep this packet, you can go to this one or this one, and please respond to Betsy. And then I have a slide on DDS supports. But if we're wrapping up, I do just want to get to the next couple slides if we can, please, Lisa. And these are these next few slides, and they're in your packet so you can refer to them, but the next few slides are the family support centers and the autism support centers that are around Boston. And I did want to mention these to you because the family support centers and the autism support centers can help with the application. So you have contact information here, and you can call the centers, let them know I have the DDS application, and I would like some assistance. And this is what folks do, so they really have the ins and outs on what to put together and the process for that as well. Please reach out to me anytime, share my information. You had mentioned a parent group in the back. If you are part of a parent group and you'd like me to come out and speak to the group and talk about services, autism services, or transition, you can certainly let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You had a question?
Oh.
Right here, I saw your hand was up. Was your hand up for a question? You good? Okay, so, did anyone have a question? Okay, wonderful. So our next presenter is going to be Jill Richards from MRC. Who's going to talk about some of the services that they have available also. Jill, ready? Yes. I'll scoop up there. You can hand up some. I need to pass it. I'll get you.
If you don't mind. Should bring my water. No, it's out. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I am Jill from Mass Rehab Commission, MRC, Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. You've heard us called by a number of names over the years, some maybe not so nice names if you've worked with us before. I'm going to try to keep it very brief and give you just sort of what you need to know to get through tonight. So just for the most part, I also want to make sure that this is applicable to the people in the room, but have tons of information about the different programs. So bottom line is Mass Rehab is something that is most likely for students starting at age 14. That would be probably the earliest we would really start communicating with families or with students and start working with students. We don't have a children's services unit or anything like that. So for those of you, if there's anybody here with really young ones, we'll be a little bit further down the road for you. But so I just want to give you kind of a quick overview. There's been a lot of changes within the agency over the past couple of years, particularly this last year alone. Tons and tons of changes to the way that we provide services, to our funding, to the way we provide funding, to the rules. I certainly won't get into all of that tonight, but if you have any specific questions, I've got a bunch of different handouts between up here and then back there. There's a sheet, so the two main offices that we have in Boston are the downtown Boston office and the Roxbury office. I'm housed out of the Roxbury office, but so it really just depends on what school. So between the two of us, we cover all of Boston Public, every single public and public charter school, and then lots of private schools have actually reached out to us for some counseling support. So one of us will take care of it, so just if you have any questions, contact either office, Amy, your son or daughter's school, and we'll go from there. So, just a super quick overview of MRC. We're a state agency like DDS. We have 3 divisions. All 3 divisions are focused on support for people with disabilities. The 3 divisions are VR, Vocational Rehabilitation, that's the division that I'm in. And that's employment supports, strictly focused on vocational and employment supports for people with disabilities, starting at age 14. We have Disability Determination Services, the other DDS. just because we want to make it as confusing as possible for families. So our DDS is eligibility determination for Social Security benefits. Community Living Division is our division that focuses on sort of, we say like, VR does employment, community living does everything else. So your home care, your traumatic brain injury programs, protective services, our assistive technology programs, everything that's sort of not specifically vocational is housed in our Community Living Division. So all the contact information is on the final slide is the website. That's where you can find a ton of contact information. You can always reach out to anybody in the local offices and they can get you connected. So MRC serves people with disabilities in general. We sort of, any combination or any one or combination of people with physical impairments, emotional impairments, learning difficulties, substance abuse history, intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, or like I said, some combination of the above. The only population that we don't work directly with is individuals who are legally blind, because they are connected with Mass Commission for the Blind. So we're the only, Mass Commission for the Blind is the only agency you can't have that with someone else. So you can't be MRC and MCB, but I think one of the things that's super that if you take nothing else from this meeting that I would want you to hear loud and clear is you can have MRC and DDS. You can have MRC and DMH, the Department of Mental Health. That's what's so important. Historically, we've gotten so many times where we meet families in the community and they say like, oh, I wish we knew about you, but we're connected with DDS. And it's like, that's okay, it's not too late. We work with people starting at age 14 and up to age 100. If you still want to work and you need supports, we're still available. So you absolutely can share. So for the purposes, obviously, of being here tonight, we want to talk specifically about services for students. Our job, like it says here, our job is to help students really just get a better understanding of their disability. But we've really started to really rethink how we're helping students prepare for life after graduation. So on the next slide, thank you, the three sort of main topics, which I don't even have to cover 688 because Maria did that, thank you. Our pre-employment transition services, or this idea of pre-employment transition services, is such a huge topic. Certainly couldn't cover it in a couple of minutes tonight, but I'll give you a crash course in that. And then just a quick plug about the Transition Pathway Services Grant Project. That is a project that I'm working on, so I'll give a plug for that as well and see if we can spread the word about that. The sort of backstory is that MRC realized that for many years we've been providing services to students in high school, or we've been working with students when they were in high school. The law says that we have to. What we weren't doing was we weren't working with students who were both eligible and potentially eligible for services. And that's where we got in trouble. A couple of years ago, our parent, the federal agency that oversees us, said, you're not doing enough work with students who might be eligible for your services. You are required to work with students who are both determined eligible and those who might be eligible for your services. And it has to be in accordance with your state laws. So for Massachusetts, it was, you have to start working with students who might be eligible for your services starting at age 14, because Massachusetts law says 14, whereas in some other states it's 16 or 18, but Massachusetts is 14. So a sort of very quick overview of the services available to transition age youth, we say, which is now 14 to 22. Depending on how old your student is and sort of where they are in the process, some of these services are more focused on like older students or younger students, but just all of them fall somewhere in that age range. So the Transition to Adulthood program, the TAP and the TIP programs, the Young Adult Supported Living programs, those are programs specifically through our Community Living Division. Some of them we get support from the independent living centers in the community with those programs, and we refer a lot back and forth between those two programs. We get student referrals to and from those programs. The Youth Leadership Forum and the Youth Leadership Network are both really exciting opportunities that PYD, Partners for Youth with Disabilities, has recently been working with. The Youth Leadership Forum, I think the application might have cleared. It's an event that they host every year in June. It's like a multi-day event at Bridgewater State University. So if you do not have a student in high school this year who applied for it, or if you have a recent high school graduate, definitely put that on the radar for next year.
Can I just speak to it, because my daughter did that one year, and so it's 3 days at Bridgewater State University. She was 16, 17 when she did it.
Awesome, yeah.
So she went on her own, they stay over, they have to learn to, there's people there, there's folks there that are helping them, but a lot of it is that independent skills, and then they take courses on self-advocacy and different things, and leadership, so she really enjoyed it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's been an awesome opportunity. One of our, the family members in the room went as well, so we had an awesome experience with that. So, like I said, basically what we're doing is, what we've done as an agency is really had to take a look, and this is still, a lot of this is really very much still in process right now. You're gonna see some big changes really take place effective sort of July 1st that will really roll out into the new school year. The idea is that we're focused on awareness, exploration, and preparation for students starting as early as 14, but the key here is that no longer do students need to apply to MRC services, to the VR division, this vocational rehabilitation program, to have access to these pre-employment transition services. That's the most important piece, that's the biggest change for us. We're really shifting services to pre-MRC. The idea, almost in a strange way, is essentially for students not to need us, and for students not to end up getting referred to MRC. The hope is that students will get services provided while they're still in high school, these pre-employment transition services provided to them while they're still in high school in such a way that they may not need to apply for adult services because they will have gained some of these really important skills, and now they have the skills to succeed independently or with minimal supports after high school. So, if you want to go on to the next slide, it's easier to sort of just break it down by. So the 5 pre-ET services, the 5 pre-employment transition services are job exploration counseling, workplace readiness training, work-based learning experiences, post-secondary education and vocational counseling, and self-advocacy and mentoring. Those have been the same 5 from day one, but again, we were providing these services using contracted service MRC with the VR division, the vocational division. So the idea, like we said, is to sort of we need to stop putting the barriers up. We need to have sort of a quick, very easy access, smoother access, rapid engagement. There's no waiting. It's get connected, ask the school, ask the partners, ask one of the MRC offices, get connected directly with the vendor, begin having access to services immediately. A lot of the services are based in the community, just so that they can serve the most amount of students, so not all of them are able to do like individual groups and individual schools, but a lot of them are still able to really maintain a level of real individual supports, or if there's a big enough group, they're happy to go to the schools and do some of these workshops and do some of these activities with the students. So,
Next slide.
yeah, thank you. This is basically what I just said. So the after high school is determined. The idea is that if a student has access to really comprehensive services, exploring and trying out work experiences during high school, they're less likely to need extensive vocational supports after high school. The idea is that we've armed them with the tools and the skills to seek employment or to go to college and to access accommodations independently, or to know how to ask for help for those things, but without necessarily needing to go through the adult vocational process. But there will be some students who will still need adult supports from MRC, and that's what we're still here for. So we're not changing anything about, we're not trying to put ourselves out of business. We're just trying to do a little bit better at an earlier stage. So, yes.
Do you want that one or not?
It's very, very similar as with DPS. You can connect to MRC. Like I said, you can connect to the providers directly. Schools now have access to connect to the providers in their area. You might ask, how do you find out who the providers are in your area? So right now, I could give you a list right now of the providers who are available to your particular schools in your particular areas. we are going through right now the renewal of all the contracts. Right now is like the time when they're basically deciding sort of who gets a contract as of July 1st and who doesn't. So the landscape might look a little bit different. Some of the money might get shifted around. So some of our providers that haven't provided as many of these, maybe they've only provided 1 or 2 of these pre-ed services. Now they've really got to kind of bulk it up. They've really got to be, come to the table with a pitch to provide, 5 of these services, or else they might not get awarded the contract, versus that some of that money might go towards a partner that is really going to provide all 5 of these services comprehensively. So a lot of that's going to change a little bit. So it shouldn't be anything like brand new in terms of providers, but where the Roxbury office right now has access to like 6 providers, that might change. We might have fewer, but they provide more comprehensive services as of the new school year. So the process to get connected, the main way is still through just direct contact with MRC, and one of the counselors will be able to guide you as far as, you don't even need to talk to me yet, you don't need to apply yet. Let's have you connect with this particular vendor, where you're located, what your student's looking for.
And I just want to say, because my daughter went through pre-eds as well, so the best at your IEP table to ask about MRC, ask about pre-eds, and how your student could get connected to one of the vendors. My daughter was connected to Work Opportunities Unlimited, and they did everything that you talked about, so all those 5 things, and she ended up at a job at TJ Maxx where she still is, but she's supported now by a different vendor, which is Best Buddies in that. So she worked through all the mock interview skills, filling out applications, all those pre-employment skills that she needed. But I would, for this purpose, talk to your school. I mean, unless you're connected already to MRC and but it's, I think, easier to just ask your
Even
school.
if you are, even if you're already connected with MRC, it's, again, I think part of the problem was that we were sort of enrolling students, but we were treating it like a standard MRC case. And we're talking about pre-adults here. We're talking often about students that are just not really ready to think about permanent employment, and we can't really treat them as such. And families that don't have any experience with this. So even an active student on one of our caseloads right now may not yet have accessed pre-ed services, and they are available. So absolutely, thank you.
Next slide.
Yeah, so very, very quickly, I will plug the TPS grant, the Transition Pathway Services Grant Program. That's the purple flyer that you have. So that's the program that I'm on. We are in our 3rd of 5 years on the grant program right now. So it's a great opportunity. It's a way that we were really trying to look again at the way that we provide services to students and really making it a little bit more comprehensive, but trying to figure out if it's sustainable. So the TPS grant right now is recruiting, we're still recruiting students, but we are specifically looking for students who are graduating or exiting high school. So students who are planning to leave their high school program between 2020 and 2021. So we're saying like students that are graduating next year or the year after, or turning 22 or aging out. The reason we've narrowed it to a very small sort of window of time is because we're trying to measure outcomes as part of the grant. So we want to be able to provide the services and then be able to measure what the post-secondary outcome was. So we need students to graduate by the end of the grant so that we have something to measure, so that we can look at what they're doing after high school and decide if it was successful or not. But so that's who specifically we're recruiting right now. I think it's the next slide, but basically the idea is there's a set of 10 services, 10 components that students have access to. A lot of it is what every student through MRC should have access to, and really does essentially in theory have access to. But the way that the model is designed is it really ensures that these things are done and that they are tracked. All students anybody who's connected with MRC has access to a benefits planner to discuss Social Security benefits and work and the impact of work on benefits. But the truth is, not every MRC counselor thinks to bring that up or really pushes for that to be provided or walks a family through that. Not necessarily for any reason other than it just didn't come up in conversation. Through the TPS grant, we're trying to see if we really make a concerted effort to make sure that these 10 services are provided to students before they leave high school. Is there measurably better outcomes for this group of students than the traditional student? So it's an awesome program. It's going well. The huge focus is on work-based learning experience. community experiences like Diane's daughter, who, for example, would do some of the workplace readiness training that she did, and then the internship at TJ Maxx, which turned into an employment opportunity. So it's exciting. There's tons of information up here. A lot of it says very similar things about these different programs, so please just give a call, ask questions, go on the website, anything we can help you with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Is pre-eds available to students on a 504?
Any student with it, because now pre-eds are available to students who are eligible or potentially eligible. So students with a 504 would be students who would be eligible eventually anyways, but we're looking at them as, you might want to apply for adult services, so yes, absolutely.
Our next presenter is going to be Justin Chapman from Lesley University. I was just telling Diane, I was on the website because I was looking at their program. One of the unique things about the program too is that they do accept students that are going to graduate with that high school diploma or certificate of attendance, which is really exciting because that's been a lot of concern with a lot of parents about, well, my child's graduating with a certificate of attendance, but they still may want that college experience or opportunity to job training, things like that. And they have a great program that he's going to briefly tell us about, and then Ellis is going to give us a preview about Social Security benefits following that. And then that will be it, so stick with us.
Thanks, yeah, I'll be really brief, and again, there's nothing going on up here, but we're all kind of like a family, extended family. I've known Jill for like 8 or 9 years, we just ran into each other tonight. We have another benefits coordinator. Her nephew went through the Threshold program, and he's a great success. And then I didn't realize that Mr. Corner, my second cousin is my family, so we are like family.
This is my
I didn't realize you would be here.
I didn't realize it.
So we are like family, we really do care about the students, and we understand what you're going through. It's very confusing. It's confusing for us, but we're all here for you, and we get it. So Lesley University is, and in the bag there, it's just the brochure. It's like a regular college brochure that you would see. Inside gives you the checklist of some of the criteria. What would your student need to look like if they were going to this college, right? So briefly, some of the characteristics we look for are students between 18 and 26. They've qualified in the past for special education services. They might struggle with a regular degree program. A lot of our students are now able to audit a class, and then we have a few that are going for their associates, and one that's going for her bachelor's. So that could be a long-term goal for them, but the first step would be to see if they can have independent living, improve their social skills and their vocational skills as well. So those are the 3 main goals. But again, if you're like, well, what does the typical Threshold student look like? The name of our program is the Threshold program. Again, qualified for special education, would potentially struggle in a degree program right after high school. They might have a reading or math score between grades 3 and 7, IQs in the 70s or 80s, but don't look in that and say, oh, they're below, I'm not going to apply. We have many that are below that IQ level as well. Really quick, Threshold has 2 dorms that our students live in on Oxford Street in Cambridge, which is between Porter and Harvard, parallel right to Mass Ave, right next to Harvard University. We have RAs, resident assistants, that live in the 2 separate dorms with our students. They have roommates, they have the, what everyone thinks of a college experience. They have a meal plan, they have classes that they go to. Again, they're not graduating with a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. They're graduating with a certificate from the Threshold program. The one part of the training that is licensed is our the child care. They're able to, those that want to work with children, little children, I'm not good with little children, so I can never do this, but they get licensed to be a teacher's aide in the classroom. So that's huge. A lot of students take that track. The other track is business. So, and business could be anything, right? We focus on food service, retail, office work, and support services. That's sort of the realm of business. What else can I tell you about us? We are just as expensive as a regular college. So yeah, it's tough. We currently have a student that was in Quincy. She's getting close to fully funded.